So welcome to today's VOD TV real-time conversation. We're with Dr. Alain Kornhauser, and it could be said that he is, in fact, I'm going to say it, he's one of the godfathers of automated mobility. And he's been doing this for so many years in so many different industries, if you will, but all around this idea of motion and movement. And each week he entertains and educates with his wisdom and wit, working with Fred Fishkin, and they put together this Smart Driving Car podcast. And I think what really differentiates Alain from the crowd is his experience in seeing where we've been and where we're going. And so he's done some amazing things working on the Apollo program, working on the first personal rapid transit in West Virginia, and even leading a Princeton team on the DARPA challenge. So I've been very fortunate to know Alain for several years. He's given me a lot of insight over the years, and I want to talk a little bit about him and some of that insight. Alain, you're a great American success story in my eyes, but you weren't born in America. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess I do consider myself a great American success story, I guess, at least from a perception of America from across the body of water. I mean, I think that yes, there is an I in my name. It's people call me Alain, but it's Alain. It's French. And my middle name is Lucien, which is real French. Last name happens to be Kornhauser, but in French it's Kornhauser, so it's Alain Lucien Kornhauser. So it can be very French when you get right down to it, but of course it's not. It's an interesting side story on that. When I matriculated at Penn State, you put your name on an 80-character card, punch card IBM and so on. And so there was a limit in the number of characters you could have in your name. So I think as a freshman or whatever, and at Penn State, I was Alain, Alain, Lucie, Lucie, not enough room for the N. So here I am, Alain Lucie Kornhauser, and even to today, I mean, Amazon sends me breast enlargement advertisements and dresses to wear and who knows what. So anyway, that's with the name. But I was born in France. I was born 6 days after D-Day near Lyon. My father was a prisoner of war. He had been captured at the Maginot Line by the Germans, and so of course the question is, how the hell did you get fathered by a prisoner of war in Germany with a French mother? And of course, the reason is he escaped and was able to find my mother and be protected by the community during the end of the Vichy occupation. And although I guess the first whatever number of months of my life I spent in hiding and whatever before the French troops arrived in September, the American troops arrived in September. But anyway, so that was the start. And very fortunate to have a father who had the wherewithal and whatever to not only be able to escape from the Stalag 12B, but also to help my godfather escape just before him. And anyway, so that's kind of how it started. But post World War II, France was maybe not the best place to continue to have a family. I had an older sister of 7 years, and so my father and my mother applied for immigration to the United States because of the gold line streets and the opportunities that existed here, and were able to come and on a boat, through Ellis Island. And basically my father was 49 years old at the time and started at zero.
Wow. So he was relatively old when he was in
Oh yeah,
prison
he
then.
was relatively old. He was born 1902, and in what is Ukraine now. He and his brother left home, the shtetl in Ukraine at age of 14 or something like that. Went to Budapest, found a family who took them in, and they basically carried 50-pound bags of flour and so on and whatever, and worked for this person who had a small grocery store in Budapest, and eventually made it to France, eventually met my mother, blah, blah, blah. A lot of tough stories, but this is, so, hey.
So coming to America,
I have a lot to give back. Yeah, so whatever.
Well, it's remarkable.
But it really is true. The opportunities here to basically take somebody, from zero. Yeah, I am white. Okay, that does help. Okay, helped it probably enormously. Okay, and discrimination, not discrimination, Jewish, whatever, so on and so forth, whatever. Out of all that, the opportunity. This is, yeah. Hey, look at me. I'm pretty happy. I mean, enormously fortunate. And, few have been as lucky as I've been.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about that story, but what brought him to Pittsburgh, of all places?
Well, because when at least at that time, to have the proper papers, then somebody had to sponsor you, and it turned out that it was the son of the owner of that grocery store in Budapest, who my father had continued to. Who had come earlier to the United States and decided to sponsor my father, and there was supposed to be a job here for him, but there wasn't, and all the other things, but there wasn't a real, red carpet set up, but there was sufficient red carpet, in fact, to have the papers to get here. And then once we're here, had to figure out, fight your way out of the paper bag and do it. So, just do it.
And the sponsor was in Pittsburgh then?
The sponsor was in Pittsburgh. He was in McKeesport, but, we ended up there. Really wasn't a job there, and so on and so forth. Ended up in a place called Crafton, and, for luckily, in some sense, the first suburb out of Pittsburgh, as opposed to in Pittsburgh's city schools, Pittsburgh city schools, some of them are fantastic if you live in the right area of Pittsburgh, and which is enormously segregated then, probably still segregated now. You're in the wrong part of Pittsburgh, man. I don't know. It's real.
So how old were you when that?
So I was 7 years old.
How old were you?
So I was 7 years old when I got, or just about 7 when we landed.
So English was not your first language.
I flunked first grade. Maybe the only Princeton professor to ever flunk first grade. I just thought of that. Maybe I must be. I've got to be. I flunked first grade. But I didn't speak any English.
Yeah.
Okay, so I show up. I had to repeat first grade. I repeated.
And there was no TV, no internet, or anything like that.
I skipped second and went to third, so it made up for it.
Yeah, you made up for it.
But I flunked first grade.
And there probably wasn't a lot of special accommodation for you, was there? As far as
No.
You just had to figure
well,
it
I
out.
was, there were, this was a working class suburb and so on, a blue collar suburb, and there were others that were probably somewhat similar, but there wasn't there wasn't group speaking French and English or Spanish and English, whatever.
Right.
But so you had to learn the language. So I learned the language,
And then I would imagine the culture too is a whole other thing. I guess being that young is probably different.
But people, look, people have been very nice to me, and so I was the only Jewish kid in the school, but no big deal, I guess.
And you definitely absorbed the culture from a sports perspective, becoming a fan of all the Pittsburgh
Oh yeah, no,
teams,
I'm a big
right?
Stiller fan. I am a big Stiller fan. We have to win Monday night. If we can't beat the Bungles, I mean, what my goodness, holy hell! Start out 11-0 and just go in the toilet. I don't know, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, you also mentioned, I mean, it sounds like, so you had your first grade issue, but then it sounds like in seventh grade, you had an issue with one of your teachers. I think you mentioned this in one of your podcasts.
No.
I'm grave digging, of course.
Yeah, I guess actually, I joke about it, but it probably was kind of important. I'm in the back of the room, and seventh grader, man, I'm throwing spitballs or something, second day of class. Teacher said, Kornhauser, get up here. Lean over the desk. Whack, 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 whack. And basically paddles me right in front of the class. I didn't throw spitballs again, that'll ever maybe. Don't necessarily recommend that we go back to corporal punishment, but certainly for me, it was, it helped. It helped me sort of.
Well, so did it also impact your academic performance as well?
Well, I guess so, a little bit, but I think I had some other reasonably good teachers in high school, and kept me somewhat motivated, and I wasn't the best student in any sense of the word, but I was up there, top 10% or whatever, and I thought at the time the first thing I wanted to be was a cook, a chef. Why? Because my grandfather had been a chef and my mother was a very good cook. I still enjoy cooking, and then I thought, man, I'm just going to go work in the steel mill during the day and 10 bar at night, and whatever, and go on. And I guess the other sort of important thing that sort of happened, I imagine others of my age group, was Sputnik was a big thing. Sputnik changed really, even as I could see it going through it, changed education. What is just a normal working class suburb school, small school, and there was just an awful lot more focus on technology, I guess, is what we would call it now, and I got wrapped up in that, and I became really interested in that whole end of things. And so I ended up applying to try to get into an aerospace engineering college someplace, and got into a few places, got into Penn State, and like most freshmen went there. The fall semester of my freshman year was, man, talk about cultural change. I mean, really cultural change. I mean, real cultural change. Didn't have the most stellar grades my first semester,
but you got through it and got through into the second semester.
I was trying to flunk out early so I wouldn't have to avoid the rush later. So. But somehow I got through it, and then really starting in my sophomore year, I sort of started taking it really seriously, and then that sort of ended up that here I was, trying to avoid the rush flunking out later. Ended up I'd never gotten a regular paycheck from anything other than a university in my life. So I ended up going
Interesting.
and never leaving. And
well, we know that you had some other side ventures that actually were,
but they were not like you get a paycheck,
yeah.
you get the value for your contributions, and increased valuations and all that sort of stuff.
So you're having to pay for this yourself, I assume, because your parents aren't exactly wealthy or anything, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
of course, they took out loans. And one of the reasons, of course, I went to Penn State was because of the state university. And I went to summer schools. Why? Because the tuition was cheaper. That's only half the answer. The other half the answer, there weren't any jobs. So you look at the summer of 1960, 63, 64, whatever, there really weren't jobs out there for. Now, if I would have been at Princeton undergraduate, I would have gotten, of course, whatever at the gold mine sacks of the time. But, but here I am at state school. There really weren't, and tuition was cheaper. So that was part of it. And then, of course, I worked and so on. And I think my sophomore year, my rent was $6 a week or something like that in this, bare room and whatever. But hey, whatever.
So you get your undergrad degree, and you just decide to keep going, huh?
Yeah, I just decided to keep going. I got married right after my undergraduate degree, and a lot of this was thanks to meeting my wife, what ended up being my first wife, but my wife, who really turned me around, kicked my butt, and got me focused, and so on and so forth, and then stayed on for a master's degree. She did too, and then we sort of and tried to figure out what the heck we were going to do. We had both. She was a math major and a computer science major, and I was aerospace engineering. And we were, this was a hot time for that kind of stuff. We got flown first class out to California. I remember the interview for jobs at like Douglas Aircraft and all this stuff. And it was like, yeah, all right. And but somehow sort of said, well, I don't know. It's sort of like the university. Maybe I should become a professor, but to be a professor, you need a PhD. So well, apply someplace to go get a PhD. Let's apply to Princeton. Luckily, Mike Line read my application, said, come on. So I went to Princeton to get a PhD.
So what year are we looking at that point?
We graduated undergraduate, December 65, got my master's degree then in the spring of 67, and then went to Princeton the fall of 67 to begin PhD land. So I've basically been in Princeton since September of 1967, essentially continuously, because I played summer softball in summers 1968 in Princeton. And probably 35 years ago, I took over as commissioner. And I have run Princeton Summer Softball League as the George Steinbrenner, if anybody knows, the Yankees version of the Princeton Summer Softball activity. And until this summer, I've played at least one game of summer softball since 1968. I mean, that's like 50 plus years That is.
I think you beat Lou Gehrig or
that is
Cal Ripken.
And sort of the funny part of all that is that I'll be in an airport and somebody will come, Alan, it's a former graduate student or whatever, Princeton. Oh man, did I love summer softball? I mean, that's the only thing I'm known for is the summer softball league at Princeton. And then this summer, how strange. Oh my goodness, no summer softball. Oh, terrible. We're gonna bring it back up. It took COVID to end it. I mean, damn it.
Well, it'll be back.